Hello, everybody. Today we're joined by Carnivore Ali, who many of you may follow on Instagram. He's got a fantastic profile, and I've shared quite a lot of his content. So I thought this is a good opportunity to get Ali onto the pod and find out his story and how he came to the carnivore diet. So, Ali, welcome.
Hi, Simon. Thank you very much. Thanks very much for having me on the show. I would say that you guys are quite an inspiration to me recently, and yeah, it's an honor to be here.
My pleasure. Very happy to have you here. So, Ali, I know a little bit about your story, but I think it would be cool to start from the start. So, how did
Okay.
you discover the carnivore diet, and why did you decide I'm going to give this thing a go?
Um, so for me, I knew about the carnivore diet for quite a long time as the carnivore diet, and I think for a lot of people, in a similar situation, they probably knew it from Dr. Sean Baker being on Joe Rogan, right? So I've known about it since then, but in the same way as I've known about the vegan diet or any other diet, the Atkins diet type thing, just from hearing about it,
Yep.
um, and never really gave it any second thought. Um, Separately to that, I over the last, let's say, 10 years or so have developed some kind of autoimmune disease or condition. I actually don't like saying the word disease about myself. I don't know why, but some sort of autoimmune problem. And going from four or five different doctors and then specialists, and then even further, sort of deeper specialists in the UK NHS, I ended up under the care of one of the most senior specialists in rheumatoid arthritis based conditions based out of one of the universities in Manchester.
Ali,
So
what sort of symptoms were you experiencing?
So I would have Raynaud syndrome was one of the worst ones. So throughout the day, regardless of temperature, like weather-wise, my hands would get very white and extremely cold. And I just thought that I had cold hands for years. But it got to the point where, like, if I would take my son out of the bath, he would flinch because my fingers were that cold. So that was one. I would have really low energy, like really low energy. I would get also painful joints, especially in my hips and lower sort of joints, so hips and knees, this kind of thing. And then, but those were kind of what I would describe as the symptoms that you kind of dismiss and can kind of live with because you sort of think, well, I'm getting a little bit older, maybe it's that kind of thing. But the stuff that really escalated it was I would wake up in the middle of the night with severe pain, particularly in my abdomen and intestine area or lower stomach area, and I couldn't tell. It was like it felt like it was below your stomach, but above your bum, right? So I would wake up in really bad pain, like 9 out of 10 pain, kind of level, and went for various scans. I would also have a lot of problems with putting on weight and putting on any weight. So went to various doctors, including this specialist, had brain scans for tumors and cancer, had heart scans, endoscopies, and I don't know what it's called when an endoscopy, like whichever end it goes in. I've had both. I think they're both
Colonoscopy,
called it.
endoscopy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's it. Colonoscopy. So I've had both, and the conclusion was that I had some sort of rheumatoid arthritis based autoimmune condition, but that they couldn't pinpoint it exactly. So what the doctor did was she asked me to, or the professor asked me to sign up under a medical study, which I'm still technically in, um, so that she might be able to publish any results coming from the investigation. So literally, I would go to the university and sit in a room for a day, a full day, going through various tests, whether that was thermal cameras on my hands after being in ice and then after being in hot water to see temperature grade changes, all this sort of stuff that they've done. They
Mm.
checked blood flow as well, and that was all fine because I would get some numbness, and but all my blood, capillaries and vascular system seemed to work fine. So when they did the endoscopy and the colonoscopy, it was the colonoscopy found some growths that were non-cancerous. So they said it was non-malignant, but that this could be linked with the issue.
Yeah.
And the doctor said that rather than do any surgical intervention, it might be worth to do an elimination diet. And she was the one that originally suggested what we would do is start for a very short period with, meat and eggs kind of approach and go from there. And at the same time as going through that process, I then had heard about Michaela Peterson, Jordan Peterson, again,
Mm.
Sean Baker. So I started to check back into them. And then I came across Dr. Anthony Chaffee as well. And then I thought, right, she suggested this to start. I'm gonna do it because I don't want surgery. Let's do it and go from there. And
Can
she
I,
asked me to
Ali,
keep a log. Yep,
Ali, can I ask, when
of
you got
course.
into Dr. Chaffee's content, were you watching content specifically on rheumatoid arthritis, or were you sort of, sorry, not RA, on autoimmune conditions, or were you just watching sort of any content that was put in front of you?
I did start to look at rheumatoid arthritis because there's also a history of that in my family. So on my father's side, there's
Yeah.
rheumatoid arthritis. On my mother's side, there's Crohn's disease and IBS. So it
Oh,
was kind of like
geez.
I'm probably gonna. It was kind of one of those things where I thought I need to learn about these conditions. Was looking at that, and then I didn't find Dr. Chaffee based around anything specifically carnivore search or um, along those lines. It was, I can't remember which podcast it was. It wasn't even his podcast, the Plant Free MD, or yours. It was another podcast where I heard him talk.
Okay, cool.
And what 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 I liked about hearing him talk was the logical steps that he takes in his thought process. And I sort of thought, this kind of makes sense because if I'm totally honest with you, Simon, in the past, if you'd have asked me 5 years ago, I would have been somebody who said, like the paleo type approach of ancestral eating and all this kind of thing was a bit okay. It kind of had a logic to it, but held no weight. I've always
Okay.
been much more of a science is king. So therefore, if we can get everything we want in a pill, that's way better for us because it's modern technology and modern medicine is better than historical. That would have been my approach. But
Mm.
then listening to Dr. Chaffee's rationale made me think I'm going to read more into this. So then I started to read some books and listen to more of his podcasts, your podcasts, listening to other stories from other people, and started to think, well, I'm going to start this elimination diet under the professor anyway. I'll learn as much as I can, and then it's kind of snowballed from there.
Mm.
Um,
Fantastic. And
so
so you launched into an elimination diet, which
yeah,
is AKA a carnivore diet, under the
yeah,
supervision of a professor, which you are so lucky to have that experience, and also very fortunate that they even suggested dietary intervention.
yeah.
I think in 10 years' time that'll be the norm, but right now, unfortunately, it's quite unusual. So what happened, Ali? You just started eating meat and eggs. Talk us through it.
Yeah, so the biggest challenge actually at the time, because the doctor said the way that she put it was, if you were, because I live in China, I've
Yeah.
been based out of China now for 2 years, and
Is the doctor in China or in England?
no, so this is the thing. She's in England, and when I first told her that I was moving to China, she said, "I need to remove you from my care because I can't treat you remotely." But then I managed to convince her that it would be in both of our interests if we kept in touch and I would return to the UK every sort of 3 months. And she said, okay, if you agree to do a blood test minimum every 6 months and then
Hmm.
see me at least once a year, we'll kind of go, let's say if you were being treated 100% whilst I was in the UK, she said we can kind of scale it down to, let's say, 40% while you're in China. And then when you come back, we'll pick up speed again, kind of thing. So um, maybe that was why she was free to suggest it. I don't know, because technically I'm not on her official books right now. I'm kind of like in her side project type work, I guess. So when she said elimination diet, that was the big challenge for me because I thought, okay, I'm in China. I need to figure out food sources and how I can get pure, clean meats because I don't, to my shame, I don't speak Chinese, even though I've been here for 2 years. And in the supermarkets, going in and asking for a specific cut or a specifically clean, let's say clean type of food is quite difficult. So that was my first challenge. Managed to find a butcher's who I could communicate with, and from there, then said, okay, what can they do? Do you do ground beef or mince, as we would call it in the UK? And they sort of said, we do. And I said, but what goes into it? And they said, all the offcuts from the day before. And I thought, well, I can't regulate how much fat content is in that. I can't get a good sense because sometimes it could be mainly fillet, sometimes it could be mainly ribeye. I don't know. So what I thought to do was then say, okay, I'll go with ribeyes and sort of mainly ribeyes and eggs to begin with, I think it was, and strip steaks, so sirloins and eggs, and go from there. Eggs in China, is a huge industry, and if you pay extra, you can get very good quality eggs. And
Okay.
this butcher's that I go to is quite a high end supermarket butcher by the Chinese standards. And it's quite expensive by China standards, but by Western standards, it's super cheap.
Okay.
So started doing that, and then felt so good, so quick. I couldn't believe it. I literally couldn't believe it. And um, then I thought, actually, what would happen if I dropped the eggs? Because I was using eggs to get enough fat. Because when I started when I started doing it, I liked lean cuts of meat, well done. That's what if I went to a restaurant, I would ask for a fillet steak, medium well. That would be my perfect steak. Very quickly, my taste started to change to prefer more rare cook and also fattier cuts. So then I started to lean more into the ribeyes, and I thought I'm just going to drop the eggs as well. So now I'm literally just almost 100% meat and water, almost.
Nice.
I do have some
And
butter,
yeah.
but that's it.
And it seems like good quality meat. I mean, any idea if it's grass fed or finished or I assume it tastes good.
It does. It tastes absolutely fantastic. The beef that I have here tastes better than the beef that I have when I go home to the UK. But then, admittedly, when I go back to the UK, I buy what I could afford. I don't buy the top,
Yeah.
because if you eat as much steak as I do,
Yeah.
when I go back to the UK, it would cost me like $50, 50 US dollars a day or something crazy like
Yeah.
that.
I mean,
So,
I've
um,
when I've been to the UK and I've bought meat from the supermarket, it is
yeah,
trash, shit
yeah,
meat, and very expensive as well. So
yes.
I'm sure there's really good butchers in the UK, but yeah, I guess
I
you got to
would
pay
if I
for it.
was Yeah, if I was living there permanently, I would find a local sort of butcher and try and make him my best mate
Yeah,
and
exactly right. That's the
sort of
way.
develop a good relationship with them. And I've heard other people, one of whom would be Dr. Chafee as well, talk about buying literally half a cow, like literally half a cow or a full cow from a local butcher. Maybe they've got a cow that's not ideal, is older, something like that, and you try and get a good deal. So I would try and do something like that. But then going back to the grass fed, grass finished, it's certainly grass fed
Yeah.
and not sort of like fed any crap, if you will. Grass finished, I'm not sure. I've tried to ask the butcher that, but they don't. I can't get the concept across to them because of language.
Yeah.
Um, and and yeah,
Challenging.
but it's pretty good quality for
Nice.
me.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Oh, that's good. So how long ago did you switch to the carnivore diet? Or when did
um,
you switch?
it was May 19th, so it's 5.5 months for me
Oh,
now.
wow.
Um, and
Not
it's
long.
been not long, but let's say, long enough that certain things I would say I can conclusively, almost conclusively say, right?
Well, let's
And
let, let's let's let, let's run through them and you explain exactly what's happened over the last 5 months.
okay, sure. So, for me, the biggest thing, Simon, if I'm honest, one of the reasons why I'm not looking to move away from this anytime soon is the sleep improvement. For me, as I say, I would wake up in the middle of the night in severe pain, but I would also wake up every morning covered in sweat from night sweats the night before,
Jeez.
and it was. I don't want to be too, let's say, disgusting for the listeners, but it was that bad that I would have to buy new bed sheets and bed linen every kind of couple of weeks, at least once a month. I was buying a new set because the old sets, even if I used them for 2 days and then put them in the wash, they would have
Mm.
stains on it from the sweat. So it was that bad. And then within 3 days of doing this diet, deep sleep, no sweats at all, and I've not had a single one for 5.5 months. So
That is unbelievable.
if you said to me, my favorite food before this was ice cream, and if you said to me now, there's a tub of Haagen-Dazs, if it, I don't even want to touch it because I don't want to compromise the sleep alone, just on the sleep aspect. So
Mm.
that was one in terms of the benefits. Um, I don't really get hungry throughout the day anymore. I've always eaten later in the day for the last few years anyway. So in my background, I used to be very overweight and quite a big guy, and then I dropped a lot of weight quite quickly and got into fitness.
On carnivore or
No,
before?
no, so before, so I dropped most of my weight before. I have dropped weight on carnivore, so now I'm the lowest weight that I've been in my adult life. Not intentionally. I'm lower than I would like to be, so I'm trying to build my weight back up. But I dropped the weight before carnivore, so weight management in my head was never really a problem. But now that I look back, I was hungry all the time,
Yeah.
trying to manage my weight when I was eating a low fat, higher carb diet. I was hungry all the time, and what that meant was I would basically be hungry all the way throughout the day, using willpower to get through. Then I would have a small meal before my workout, and then I would have a huge meal afterwards. And then that approach stopped me from doing anything like binge eating because I have, excuse me, in the past had some instances where I've thought, "Do you know what? I'm just going to go and get some ice cream." And next thing I know, you know, 2 tubs of Ben and Jerry's, 2 pints of Ben and Jerry's have gone. And you think to yourself, why have I done that? I don't understand why I've just done that, but I've just eaten 2 full tubs because when you're buying, you think to yourself, I'm going to go and buy a tub of ice cream. But then when you're there, you think, well, I'll buy one for the week for next weekend and I can have a small treat. But that's just your psychology tricking you because subconsciously you're thinking, I'm going to eat everything that I can get my hands on right now because I've been in a state of chronic hunger. And actually, what I think is part of it as well now is lack of um, nutrition in terms of satiation for nutrition because your body wants the nutrients, right? And I think that most people who suffer from, or not most, I think that a lot of the contributing factors towards binge eating would be the fact that people are eating crap. And although they're physically full, their body's not nourished. So their body still wants more nourishment and still wants more food. So that's why I would eat later in the day. So one of the benefits of that I found on this diet is I'm not hungry throughout the day. And then I go for my workout fasted, can work out fasted and feel great. No, no problems with energy or let's say performance in the gym. So I'm still bench pressing the same as what I would bench press before. It's like I'm increasing numbers or trying to get PRs a little bit. And similar with most exercises, most big compound exercises, what I tend to track. Um, and then I have my big meal afterwards, and that's the reason why I would eat big meals late on. Um, the OMAD approach that I do was by accident. I had literally on my third day of doing carnivore, I had a really busy day and I couldn't get my first pre-workout little meal in. So I missed it and then trained completely fasted and thought, I feel great. I'll try that again tomorrow and just see how it goes. And then that turned into, let's try this for a week and see how it goes. And then it's actually, it suits me better to just eat one meal a day, and it's great.
And
So
that
that's
meal
what
is
I do.
always dinner.
Yes. Yeah.
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 I've had
Okay.
some questions recently about on Instagram about why do I ever eat my OMAD in the earlier part of the day, or
Yeah.
why not earlier part of the day? And honestly, the reason is, again, I kind of in my brain I call that, let's say, nighttime period, let's say 2 hours before bed, as like the danger zone, where if I'm going to want a snack or if I'm going to want to eat old habit style foods, then that's the time that you're A, possibly going to be hungry, and B, if you're tired, your inhibitions maybe drop a little bit.
Mhm.
So for me, I'd much rather eat later and be completely satiated when I'm going to
Yeah.
bed.
Also, most people find they can work out better, they can concentrate better, and they have more energy if they haven't eaten throughout the day. And then when they do go to eat, okay, now it's time to rest and digest, and they find it much easier to sleep and unwind the evening. Ali, you
Exactly.
mentioned the overfed and undernourished phenomenon.
Yes.
That is what the majority of people on a sad diet are suffering from, and it's
Yeah.
horrendous because they're walking around with all this excess energy on their body. You know, it's body fat that you can just see, and at the
Yeah.
same time they're starving. At the same time, you do a blood panel and all their nutrients are low, and they're just starving and crying out for food. And that's why the packets of chips and the ice cream just disappear because they're
Yeah.
craving any sort of nutrition. So I think it's a good point and something that a lot of people suffer from. So now that you've removed all the plant toxins, which are essentially poison, from your diet, how did your autoimmune conditions respond?
Being honest with you, Simon, almost completely gone in terms of day-to-day life symptoms. So Raynaud
Nice.
syndrome, Raynaud syndrome has completely gone. I mean, right now, right now, my hands feel normal, which is not normal for me
Mm.
over last year. I mean, I don't have them to hand. I don't think they're in my suitcase in the other room, but because I don't need them. But for years now, I would be wearing very, very thin gloves, like silk gloves throughout the day, just to allow me to type because my fingers were so painful from being cold. And it's not summer here in China now, it's fully autumn, so it's like 12 degrees. And normally 12 degrees, I would have kind of like, it would be even worse, it would be more painful. So that's gone. And as I say, no more waking up with sleep. That's completely deep sleep every night, no problem at all. Um, Also, I would have in my daily symptoms psoriasis issues, particularly on my head and facial area where my beard is, and that's completely gone, completely, totally gone. And then when it comes to, I can't really describe this, but I can't articulate it well. But in terms of joint pain has gone. And the only way that I can describe the other symptom that I would get would be that my joints would feel like they was, I use the word spongy. So it's almost like that my joints would feel like they were filled with a thicker substance than, let's say, blood and water. Yeah. So if they felt like they were spongy and um, slightly inflamed, and not so much painful, although there was joint pain, but more just like it was a more viscous fluid that was just a little bit. It doesn't feel right. It just feels spongy. It's the only word I can use, and that's completely gone, completely gone. So and then the digestive pain and digestive issues as well. So I would have periods where I'd feel really bloated. Um, I thought I had periods where I felt really bloated, and wouldn't go to the toilet for a few days. Once I started on this diet, not only did that go, but I realized that what I assumed was my normal state of not being bloated was actually still bloated,
Yeah.
if that makes sense. So if you want to
Yeah.
say,
Bloated and extremely bloated.
basically, yeah, Yeah. So I've gone from having flare-ups of extremely bloated and then returning to just bloated level. Now that's completely gone to like totally zero. So it's fantastic.
That's brilliant. Yeah, look, I think part of the problem with the current medical system is that we're always looking for a specific symptom or a specific label to give somebody. And, in
Yeah.
your circumstance, it's like, okay, well, what does Ali have? Does he have rheumatoid arthritis? Does he
Yeah.
have Crohn's disease? Which label can we give him? But fundamentally, you were sick, and fundamentally, you had an autoimmune condition that, given the response so far, was caused by plant toxins and was caused by eating an inappropriate human species diet. You were very sick, and now you've removed the toxins, you've removed the poison, and overall your health is starting to come back. So I would encourage anyone listening, if you are unwell and you know something's not right, you don't have to wait around for a diagnosis of a specific autoimmune condition. You have autoimmune. You have problems that are going on, and they're rearing their head in all sorts of places, like psoriasis, like RA,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
IBS, all these problems.
Yeah.
So I'm really happy to hear how well this is sort of all worked out for you. And
I think
yeah, you go.
so, yeah, I was just going to say two things that I would say is I think that I do have to be really honest and transparent, and that's something that I also want to add is that anything that's on my Instagram account is complete transparency and honesty. So because I get kind of like a lot of questions from people to say, Guy, like, hey bro, hope everything's okay. Are you for real? Is this genuine, or are you just doing it to build a social media? It's like, guys, I've got my own career. It's successful. I'm not looking to be a social media influencer. I'm not looking to be, anything like that. I'm just doing this for transparency. So that's the first thing. The second thing that I would say is I've been really lucky, Simon. I think that I've been even in the carnivore type space, if you will. I think I'm one of the luckier ones because I didn't have any of the negative hurdles that sometimes people struggle with, whether it's, diarrhea in the first period or really low energy periods or oxalate style problems, anything like that. So far, I've had very, very little, if any, almost zero negative problems at all. And then going back to your other point that you just made about if you're feeling sick, then you don't have to wait. I would completely echo that and say, guys, you know, do your own research and don't be afraid to try your own experiment because, okay, people worry about, let's say, heart disease and the rumors and the negativity around red meat. But let's be honest, if you're gonna have any issues, it's going to take years or decades to build up if you're of doing any approach. So there's no harm in even trying something for 30 days, 60 days, 90 days. Try it out, see if how it makes you feel, and then after that you can then assess and say, okay, maybe I can add some foods in that then allow me to be more sustainable or make me feel more comfortable and just try it from there. You don't need to be as strict as I am or as strict as Michaela Peterson is or Dr. Anthony Chaffee is. You can have your own approach and get your own balance and make it sustainable for you for the long term, right? I think.
Yeah, I sort of come at it from a slightly different angle. I think 30 days can completely change your life. I think
Yeah.
30 days of a proper strict carnivore diet there is no downside. And I think it could help you discover just how good you could feel. And we see people who are even as sick as Ali or even sicker get incredible results and stuff. Things start to fall into place just in 30 days. So, you know, if you are on the fence, 30 days can change your whole life. And
Yes, it can. I think it can change your life for the positive, but it's not going to ruin your life and ruin your health. That's what people seem to be afraid of. They seem to be afraid
yeah,
to say, if I eat red meat as a strict diet for 30 days, I'm going to have a heart attack. It's like,
yeah,
no, it's not going to happen. That it's not like that. That's like saying if I eat chocolate every day for, all day every day for a week, I'm going to be 400 pounds. It takes time. It takes
yeah.
time if it's going to do any damage, which I don't think it will. I'm
No,
convinced it won't. absolute consistent one.
Ali, so how's it going with this professor and who's monitoring your progress?
With her, it's going pretty well. I go back to the UK in December, and we'll have another series of scans, blood test, and then a follow up with her. She will every time we have a meeting, she will ask me about reintroducing some foods and trying to then figure out if there's any if the what I can add. And on that topic, um, right now, as I feel and stand right now, my stance is I'm not looking to reintroduce anything. Um, Being honest, I'm more than happy with how I am right now and how I eat. Um, the biggest challenge which I face on this way of eating is actually more social, because for my job, I have a lot of instances where I'm meeting with people from other companies, meeting with people from my own company in various locations, because I am responsible for the east side of the world. So I will travel to places like India or Southeast Asia, Middle East, this kind of thing. And when you meet people and they sort of say, let's go for dinner or let's go for a drink, um, if there's more people, it's a lot easier to just say, oh, I'm not really having anything to drink, or it's okay, I'm going to eat later. Um, but it's when it's on the smaller, intimate group settings that it can be a little bit of a challenge, especially culturally. If you're in China and let's say you go to visit a customer, if they say we want to take you for dinner, saying no can be really insult an insult. So basically, I confided in some high level local colleagues who are kind of like, when you get in your work, somebody who's a bit more than just a colleague, they're a little bit of a friend as well. I confided in them to say, look, I need your support when we travel, to say to people, look, this guy, he's got a medical condition. He's not going to eat anything. He's going to sit there and drink sparkling water or hot water, um, maybe a coffee. So I do allow myself a coffee. So on Instagram, I would reply to people and say, I drink coffee socially. So, for example, at a weekend, if I have, let's say, a date or a date with neighbors, and you go out and they say, should we go for a coffee somewhere? 9 times out of 10, I'll drink water. Um, but every so often, I'll say do you know what? Yeah, I'll just have a black coffee. And I don't really notice any big negatives from it, being honest. But I try to stay away as much as I can. And that allows me to get out of jail most times if I say, look, I'm not eating anything because of medical reasons, but I can have a hot water or a sparkling water or even a coffee if you're in that sort of setting. And I can get by okay. That's okay. So when I go back to the UK in December, I'll be having that discussion with the doctor. Then I'll be interested to see what her reaction is, because her reaction then might be, well, you can't do this forever. And then I'll be basically saying, well, why not? Why not? And then I'll start coming out with maybe some of the classic answers that you hear about, certainly from Dr. Chafee as well. Well, the Inuit did this, and
Masai.
yeah, the Maasai, yeah, this kind of thing, and come with her with studies. Actually, I mentioned to somebody yesterday that I'm kind of doing a deep dive, trying to find actual medical study um, references, PubMD references that I can basically go in and say, look, there's my evidence as to what I feel and why I feel it,
Mm,
kind of thing.
yeah.
So if anybody can share that would, if they know of any particular study references, particularly around lipids or cholesterol side of things, that's also something that I'm looking into, trying to do a deep dive on at the moment.
Sure. Ali, final question. When you do your OMAD, you often post on Instagram and you've got like all these different plates full of steaks.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
First question is, why do you put them all on different plates? I just stack them up on top of each other.
Um, so the reason is that I didn't want to go on a chopping board because that seems to be what everybody wants to do. Um, and the reason why I didn't want to go on a chopping board was that I quite like, or I not only quite like, but I feel that the juices and the
Yeah.
fat that comes off it is something that you should also have, right? And
Yeah.
if
So you
it's
can sort of
soaked
drink
into
it.
the chopping board, you can't have that. And then the reason why I did separate plates was that kind of find it easier to just cut on this plate now, and then when that plate's done, next one come over kind of thing. But recently I did do sort of like two big plates with, let's say, three ribeyes on this one and three strip steaks on that one. Um, I don't know. It's a good question. It's a good question. I might
I
try it.
enjoy
Might
I
try just
enjoy
a
watching
pie.
them.
Might just
So
try it. Yeah.
and in terms of weight, by
Yes.
weight, how much beef are you eating in that OMAD 1 meal a day?
So if you don't mind, I've actually got let's say not a story, but like a background to how much I'm eating and why. If I can just quickly talk about that. So before I did this diet, I would track calories. Calories in, calories out was king. That's how I maintained my weight, right? So before I started, I was on 2,900 calories a day to maintain my weight based on how much activity I've got. Um, so I basically substituted into my fitness pal the meat tracking and the eggs and set it at that level. And I was dropping weight. So then what I did was I thought, okay, I'll add 100 grams more beef because the egg, I could either add like whole eggs, but in China, they come in a pack of 10. So I thought, I'm eating a full pack a day. I don't want to start buying multiple packs and everything else. So I'll just stick with 10 eggs a day and increase the beef. So I would add 100 grams a day, track for a week because I track my weight daily, and then still dropping weight. Okay. Kept on adding that 100 grams. And to the point where I found that now, and then when I dropped the eggs, obviously I substituted the eggs for one ribeye. It was about the same in terms of the sizes of the ribeyes that I would eat. And now I'm eating 4 pounds, 4 pounds of beef a day, um,
Nice.
which is a lot. And if you were to consider calories in, calories out, which I don't, that's something else that this diet has really helped me with as well. I'm nowhere near as obsessed with calories or what I used to be. I used to track
Yeah.
everything, and it would be okay. My daily target is 2,900, and I'd forever be thinking, well, if I eat this protein bar, what does that mean? And oh my God, my normal protein bar might be a Bear Bells that's 200 calories, but this one's a bigger one at 250. So now I have to have less rice cakes and a smaller amount of eggs for breakfast, that sort of stuff. Whereas now it's just like, dude, just eat until you're satiated. Some days I don't. There's been three times actually that I've not managed to finish my OMAD meal where I've gotten three-quarters of the way through, and I've been like, oh, the thought of putting that meat into my mouth is just terrible.
Mm.
And so that's it. You don't force it. You're done. You've eaten to the point where you don't really want any more. That's it. Whereas now, like last night, I had the 4 pounds. The last bite tasted pretty good, but I could tell that I was full and satiated, but not physically stuffed to the point where you've stretched your stomach. So you're not Thanksgiving or Christmas full,
Yeah.
as they call it. You're just happy, went for a walk afterwards, and as you say,
Nice.
rest and digest, get back from the walk and completely just zonk out. No
Yeah, I
problem.
love it. Yeah, it's more about the taste, and when it's no longer appealing to you, you never have to force yourself to eat.
No.
So I think you got a pretty good balance. But yeah, 4 pounds or 1.8 kilos. It's
Yes.
good for good people to know that because I think that's pretty normal amount for a carnivore for a carnivore. When your average person thinks about the carnivore diet, they think about eating meat. They think a 250-gram steak is like a lot of meat for the
No.
day.
Mm.
But as you can see, Ali's eating like seven or eight of those every day, and that's really what you should be aiming for.
I think so, and I think that if somebody is intimidated by the volume, so bear in mind that I mean I'm OMAD, and people will the most common comment that I tend to get is, you really eat all of that at once? How can you do that? Because I like big meals and always have. I used to be a very big guy, So when I was growing up, I would always eat big meals. So that's why I'm able to do that. If I wasn't, and I was perhaps somebody who felt I can't eat such a huge meal, I would swap my diet out. If it was in China, I would not eat the strip steaks that I eat, and I would swap those for ribeyes because ribeyes have got an even higher fat content, or a chuck steak, which is very similar to a ribeye. I would go with a smaller weight,
Yeah.
but a higher fat
I'm fat.
content
Yeah.
that way. Or if I was in the UK or in the West, I would basically, my diet would be mainly ground beef, because that's the other question that I do get a lot, Simon, is how can you afford to do this? Like if I post, people will say, you're going to be bankrupt, or I can't afford to do this. And no, I admit, and I will say, eating three or two big ribeyes, if I have a pound ribeye, I'll have, so today I'm probably going to have two ribeyes that are a pound each, and two strip steaks that are almost a pound each, with a little bit of butter as well. Um, Now, if I was in the UK, I couldn't afford that. I genuinely couldn't afford it. As we said earlier, the meat in the supermarket is really expensive. That would be, to eat that in the UK would easily be 40 to 50 pounds, British pounds a day. So that's like $60 a day.
Yeah.
So for me, I would be ground beef, mince, heavy, 80/20, and I would maybe have one steak a day, like one 8 ounce steak a day, or I would maybe have it 2 or 3 times a week. I would get a really big steak and enjoy it, but I would mainly probably sort myself out with ground beef, I think, for cost reasons.
Yeah. I
And
think
if
that
you
makes
go for
sense.
the higher, even higher, I like the taste of 80/20, and I can handle the volume to get enough fat in. Um, but if I was somebody who liked smaller meals, then I would go with even 70/30,
Yeah. Yeah.
or something like that. And really,
Because the,
because
the,
I
the
try to
fat
sit
is
between.
the fat is so satiating. So guys, if you increase the fat, you won't need to eat as much. And your body will
Exactly,
pretty quickly tell you had enough, doesn't taste good
that's enough.
anymore. Yeah.
It's also vital for your hormone health, and all your nutrients. Yeah. I try to stay above 65% fat in the diet. If I can hit 70, then I'm really happy. 70%.
Nice.
So 70% of calories, if you will, or nutrients from fat. And that a good ratio is 1 to 1 on that. If you have 1 gram of fat for 1 gram of protein, then that works out at a 70/30 split in terms of calories. So that's what I try to aim for.
Good
Did you
advice.
mind me, Simon, asking what's your diet, your exact diet like at the minute? Are you?
Um, yeah, my exact diet, I will eat fatty meat,
Yeah,
and a lot of eggs, probably 6 eggs a day. I add butter and tallow purely based on taste. And I don't measure any calories or really measure the fat content. I really do it by taste. The rhythm that works for me during the week, because I work an office job during the day, is I have breakfast and then I have dinner. So I have dinner when I come home at say like 6:30 p.m.
yeah, I'd heard you say this, where you sort of have that big gap in between.
Yeah, like I'm not saying that that's necessarily the best way to do it, but for my lifestyle, it means I don't have to pack any lunch. It means I don't have to go and shop when I'm at work, and
Yeah,
I feel really like it's really good from a like a working perspective, because in the afternoon there's no slump or there's no energy drop. It's like you're
great.
almost getting more energy at 4 p.m., whereas everybody else is getting that like afternoon hangry kind of crash. And as you know, with carnivore, I mean, you do OMAD, you don't get that panicked hunger feeling, super smooth. So yeah, my
Don't get hungry at all. I don't get
no,
hungry anymore
yeah,
whatsoever at all.
yeah. I
Yeah.
used to, I used to be angry all the time.
Do you drink coffee or any tea or anything like that? No?
No, no, but I have hot water, like you were saying.
Yeah,
Hot water, sparkling water, plain water. Yeah, that's
yeah,
good for me. I love all those.
yeah. One thing, one of my messages, if I can, or that if you want to put it that way, that I think is really crucial to push into this space, though, is that people need to not, in my opinion, and I don't know if you agree with this, but people need to not think that there's any hard and fast rules that they need to follow. There's principles. So, like you mentioned about 30 days strict carnivore, that is great. Be strict about it and go with it. And, say, I'm going to eat red meat and water, and that's it. Great. Absolutely fantastic. But people seem to believe that there's set rules that they need to follow. So I will get, like yesterday, I got a comment that really triggered this in my head where somebody had said to me, why are you only eating such a small amount of butter when we are meant to eat a stick of butter? And it's like, mate, you're not meant to eat a stick of butter. There's nothing in the carnivore rule book that says you have to eat a full stick of butter every day. You can do if that's what you choose to do and you need it for the fat content, but there's nothing hard and fast that says you have to, right? And I think that
No.
um, that's something that, to be fair to you and to be fair to certainly Dr. Chafee as well, that I have heard several times is, look, if you've got SAD diet on this end of the spectrum on the left-hand side, which is terrible for you, and then you've got strict carnivore, which might be the most optimal human appropriate, species appropriate diet on the right-hand side, even if you're 80% of the way there and you sort of say, well, I'm going to allow myself to have an avocado a couple of times a week, or I'm going to allow myself to have a little bit of coffee, or maybe I'll have cheese and dairy in small amounts kind of thing. That's okay because you're still 80% better than you were on the SAD diet, right? And for me, if somebody does that from a sustainability point of view psychologically, I think that that's better for them than trying to force themselves to be 100% strict if that then leads them to not be able to sustain it. And maybe that's an interim period. I personally find, Simon, that right now I'm kind of getting sick of butter even. So I'm thinking about dropping butter out and just being totally just red meat and thing, because the last few nights when I've had butter, the first couple of tastes where it's kind of melted on top of the beef has been, oh, this is really nice. But then by the end of the meal, I still want the meat, but I don't really want the butter anymore. So I'm kind of thinking, okay, I might just drop that because I don't need it anymore. And I know that because your tastes change. And I've heard other people like Dr. Chafee as well mentions he doesn't salt his beef at all. I'm still salting. But if my taste changes that I think to myself, actually, this is too salty now, I don't even like that. That's your body saying to you, you don't need that salt anymore. Yeah. If it tastes bad, then it's probably that's your brain probably sending, especially if it used to taste good, then your brain's probably sending you a signal to say, this is not, you don't need that.
Yeah.
And that's something that I've also found I can really say that I'm more in tune with, which is my satiety signals and hunger signals, and also listening to what my body wants. So I dropped all supplements. I used to supplement heavily with multivitamins, omega oils, glucosamine sulfate, digestive enzymes to try and help. All of this stuff I would take maybe 15 pills a day. Now I take D3 only because I sit in offices all day, so I don't really get enough sunlight. So I supplement with vitamin D, but the rest of it, like I can tell if I need more salt because I'm craving a little bit of salt, or I can tell if I've had too much because I'm really perhaps thirsty and thinking just the thought of salt. I seem to have those. I seem to be able to listen to those biological signals so much more easily now after 5 months.
Yeah, that's
Um,
right. I mean, when you remove all the plants, this kind of numb feeling, you realize that everything has been sort of numb and blurred, and you start to
yeah,
notice how eating everything and how all your senses become more heightened, and you realize how things impact you. And you're right that uh, some people can handle more things further down the spectrum, things like dairy, maybe things like
yeah,
some plants like avocados, etc. Other people need to be super strict. And essentially, you need to test yourself to find out where you fit on that spectrum. And like Ali and like a lot of people, they find that the more they do this, they just gravitate to what makes them feel the best and what makes them happiest. And sometimes that is just lion diet, pure red
Yeah,
meat, water, and maybe a bit of salt. So there is absolutely no harm in experimenting. And just for anyone listening who has autoimmune, Hashimoto's, or any other kind of really nasty conditions, the ultimate is the lion diet. And the lion diet is a great place to start. And then you can think, okay, maybe I'll try a bit of cheese, maybe I'll try a bit of eggs, that sort of thing. Yeah. So there is an
I
element of
fully
the
agree. I
spectrum.
fully agree. And I would say that it also, as you say, it completely depends on the reasons why you're doing it. Because a lot of people seem to come to the carnivore to lose weight. And if that's your thing and you don't have autoimmune, maybe you can allow yourself some freedom. If you've got really severe autoimmune, like you mentioned Hashimoto's and things like that, then, you know, maybe you just have to accept, well, I will be a lot more strict. And I guess for most people, if they're in the same situation as I am, it's not even, I don't feel restricted. I don't feel cravings. I don't feel anything like that because, as I say, the thought of having a tub of Ben and Jerry's or Haagen-Dazs now, which would have been it would be my treat at the weekend that I would look forward to probably from Wednesday towards Saturday night. Now I think to myself, not even interested, not even interested because if it compromises the benefits that I'm experiencing, I'm not I'm not interested at all. And if I can, Simon, just add, at the start, I mentioned that I I've been doing it now for not very long, 5.5 months by a lot of standards. People have been doing this for years. Um, but I feel like I have been doing it long enough to make certain conclusions. And some things I can't conclude on. I don't think I can conclude on fully. Things like we mentioned about cholesterol and lipids and the impact of the diet long term. But what I can absolutely say is you don't need carbohydrates for exercise, for example. If you did, or and you don't need fiber for digestive health. I've not eaten any fiber for 5.5 months. How is it that my digestion is better than ever? Right. So everybody who says you need fiber or you're not going to be able to go to the toilet. Well, okay, I'm just a miracle then. I'm just a miracle if that's the case, because which it obviously isn't. Yeah. So there are certain things that I feel really confident to be conclusive about, and then other things that I'm not. I'm kind of open my hands and say, I'm not saying this is the right message or the right conclusion for everyone, but it's my experience. That's all I
Yeah.
can do. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Ali, aka Carnivore Ali, thank you so much for your
Yeah.
time. It was a pleasure
My
having you
pleasure.
on board, and thank you for sharing your story.
No, my pleasure, Simon. I really appreciate you allowing me on the show. And I would say, please keep up everything that you do in terms of the podcast and the social media and your work with Dr. Chafee. It's a really valuable resource. And if anybody hears this, and this is the first podcast that you hear of Simon's, check out his other podcasts. There's some amazing stories on there. There really is. Thanks, Simon.
Thanks. Thanks, Ali. It's very kind of you.
Cheers.